What do you make of this? Is politics playing a part? There seems to be a growing issue within the Labor movement, maybe within some seats as well, because does this really change anything, given if the caveat from Penny Wong is around Hamas being removed? When's that actually going to happen?
Well, Tom, I think that's a good point. I mean, that and the way it's being spun against her at the moment, is she somehow hasn't been careful enough with her words. If you know Penny Wong and you listen to her speak, she chooses her words very carefully. She's been very precise about that. No place for Hamas. The sooner they're gone, the better for everybody. And what she's talking about is dependent on their total removal. I think part of it is actually coming about because there is a growing sort of shared frustration right around the world. I think people are watching, what's happening there, and feeling incredibly powerless about finding some solution and restoring some of the humanity. You look at Joe Biden, he's made his words pretty clear. He's had very clear words with his counterpart in Israel. And let's not forget David Cameron, the radical British politician David Cameron. He's the one who sort of kicked off again this whole conversation around a two-state solution. So, is it politics? No, but I think ultimately Australia does have a place in the world in terms of its role as a its diplomatic presence. And I think it's part of that broader conversation.
David, your thoughts? As I said, it's a big caveat. Hamas gone, no threat to Israel was part of it. And as pointed out there as well, we're not going first on this. I mean, we never do go first when it comes to the Middle East. We're a long way away and a bit part player.
I can't see Benjamin Netanyahu or Israel paying much attention to this. And part of what they're trying to do is get rid of Hamas, which, by the way, is the popularly elected government, even though there's been no elections for 7 or 8 years now. The question is, how do you achieve this? How do you achieve a government that is a prescribed terrorist organisation? I mean, Israel would love to have discussions again for the umpty-ninth time with Gaza and with the Palestinian people about a two-state solution. I was there in 2004-05 when the most recent attempt was made and was rejected by the Palestinians and the Palestinian leadership. So, getting rid of Hamas is the first step in that. Then ensuring that any offer that is extended to the Palestinians is accepted when that's never happened before. And as one commentator said in the paper, in the current arrangements, it will never be accepted because you are immediately assassinated by Islamic extremists. So, Penny Wong can no doubt trawl back through, the history of the region. Everyone would like to see that, but it has proved an intractable problem to achieve just that.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Look, we're a year or so from the election, but I think it's an interesting point in time. We're just before a budget. We've got this US inflation data which suggests it's hanging around. And my point here, Eamon, is we might not get rate cuts before the election. How will that play into things? Will people start to feel they're worse off overall under an Albanese government? Whomever is at fault there, it doesn't matter. If you're worse off, that's how you feel. Is that possibly the biggest threat to Labor at the next election?
Well, there's no doubt it looms large. I mean, this is a government you look at, whether it's Jim Chalmers or whether it's the Prime Minister, being very, very clear about inflation is still here. It may have been trending the right way up until this point, but the job's not done. There's everything that has to be done in order to keep it going down, or at least applying downward pressure. But we're not immune, right? I mean, it's happening right around the world, as you've just talked about. There's all the interest looking at what happens in the US. So it's a huge challenge electorally. Yeah, it's absolutely why this is a government that did what it did around stage 3. That's why there has been assistance around some of the cost of living measures. But also, I think this budget is the one where they'll be very, very mindful about not wanting to do anything that adds to inflationary pressure, which is why some of the statements, I think they've been very, very careful about what's being rolled out and how it will be rolled out. But you're absolutely right, Tom. We could be less than a year away from an election. So now's the time. Yeah,
we're not going to see much in that budget from every indication, because as we keep hearing, the tax cuts starting on July 1, the reworked tax cuts are where the spend is at. David, is it, for all the talk and obsessing over all these different policies, what happens in that economic sense that is out of control of the opposition or the government? It's going to be the biggest factor, isn't it? Because if you've got a mortgage, which is a third of Australians, this is the number, the first 5 sort of issues in your life are, will we get some rate cuts?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. The longer the inflation stays higher in the rest of the world and inflationary pressures look like they're going to stay stubbornly high here for the foreseeable future, the cost of living equation will loom large in every Australian and every homeowner's, every mortgage holder's mind. Consider this, though, there's been 13 rate cuts. Even if you do by the next election, rate rises, sorry. Even
I don't
if
want to get people excited.
Yeah, you get excited about that. Even if you get an interest rate cut of 25 or 50 basis points, you're still paying really high rates. You're still paying high energy costs.
But if even 2 or 3 happens, the trend's your friend in that regard, right? You go, it's turning.
Yeah, but here's the other thing, right? And this is where no doubt the coalition will focus, because Anthony Albanese says, well, we want to make sure we don't do anything inflationary. There's already been changes to industrial relations regulations and laws that will push wages costs higher. That was what they were intended to do. That could be inflationary. So you can no doubt sense the coalition will go there.
Well, I think they will. I mean, so far the evidence doesn't seem to be, but it doesn't mean it doesn't get to that point. Then we arrive at this juncture, Eamon. Should Labor just have a bit more of a crack? I mean, they made a huge decision and risk on stage 3. Do they need to really open up other potential avenues? And I'm not saying for public debate, because if you put 10 ideas up there around negative gearing and capital gains and then sort of back away from them, it doesn't work out well. But should they be bold, do you think? Or is this almost enough for the term in terms of reform?
Well, let's just see what comes out in May. But I think they've already started to flag some other bold ideas. I mean, part of the challenge we've got actually is, there's a need to bring more investment in terms of some of the work around transition. That's a huge task. Ultimately, that will lead to a broader economic gain, and that's a big part of it. So, they're already flagging steps like that. It's not all just immediate cost of living relief, but this is a government that's done a fair bit of that anyway. So, let's see where they actually end up come May. But certainly, I don't agree that they haven't been bold. I think this is a term characterised by bold steps at every step of the way.
Well, I guess I'm talking, though, about really getting in under the engine and going, we rely so heavily on income tax income tax itself, I should say, raising money from that. So I'll flip it over to you, David. For the opposition, if they're not quite resonating, do you think you get rewarded anymore for being bold, for putting up these big ideas and having conversations, or is it going to be small target?
It normally, being bold, I went through the last tax reform process that was bold, introducing the GST and wiping out a whole range of other tax. And it was the most scarifying election period of my life, because you're opposed by absolutely everyone along the way.
So wasn't the issue there as well, to jump in, that at that point the coalition had this strong majority? They thought we can weather the storm. And they did. They lost two-party preferred vote across the nation.
Correct.
Labor has no room,
They don't have room. The last tax change, essentially halved the tax cuts that were already legislated. It was hardly reform. In fact, it adds to government coffers through bracket creep. The key to reforming the tax system is to make the tax system more productive. Not to have a tax mix switch where you just move different tax cuts between different cohorts.
I mean, there's arguments for fairness, but then productivity has to be in there too.
Absolutely. We have one of the most progressive tax scales, and you now have the top end paying the vast majority. I think the top 3% pay 50% of the tax.
We're out of time, so Eamon, we'll just have to assume that you totally agree with that. Eamon, David, thank you. Talk again soon.